Welcome into Boxing Scene Today here at the ProBox TV studios. So much to talk about. Where do we start? The only place you can start, that's right, heavyweight boxing. As heavyweight boxing goes, so does the rest of boxing. Well, guess what? Right now, we have an all-time great at the top. Oleksandr Usyk, of course, demolishing Daniel Dubois in a fifth-round knockout that has the whole boxing world buzzing. He was great. He is great. Is he the greatest of all time? We tackle it here. Jimmy Smith alongside the champs, Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi. Before we even get started, and I know when I get Paulie started, I got to calm him down a little bit. We're going to get to you in a second. Chris, the nuts and bolts of that one fight against Dubois. He has officially lapped the division. He has beaten everyone twice, and he did it in emphatic fashion. Nuts and bolts-wise, what'd you think of that one performance?
I mean, Oleksandr Usyk continually surprises me, and I'm a guy who says literally that I can't see the guy losing. And people are asking me about this fight. Oh, Dubois gotten a lot better. The trajectory-wise, like this might be it for Oleksandr Usyk. He might get old overnight. Dubois much better. And I still was like, all of that's true. I still don't see Usyk losing. The guy just doesn't know how to lose. He's never lost. He's been on the brink before. He figures it out. This was different. First round, Dubois had a fantastic game plan. He came out, he was loose, he didn't look too tight, he's letting the jab go, he landed some right hands that you could tell were bothering Usyk. He was getting backed up into corners and along the ropes. Round two, completely different fight. Usyk was like, no. You push me into the corner. That's not happening again. That's not where I need to fight. I'm going to control the center of the ring. I'm going to back you up.
A little bit out of line yourself.
Disrespect him a little bit. Disrespected him a little bit.
He had to slap him up a little bit, put him in his place, and immediately the fight changed. And you saw, number one, Dubois getting uncomfortable. Number two, you saw his burn rate way too high. Way too high. The pace that Usyk sets on these big heavyweights, they just can't keep up with him. And then also the tactical and from the mindset, he's playing mind games with them. He's playing chess the whole time. He's setting it up. And once he had him hurt, it was over. He knew it was over. He took his time. Finishes him with this. What did he called that? I saw it in an interview. He called it something. I don't know, but he throws this wide, hard hook, but it was just like off the right hand, boom, and you see Dubois' head spin. The mouthpiece flies this way. He crumbles. No shot of getting up. One punch KO of a big brute like Dubois. Like, I mean, what more can you say? The guy just nailed the coffin.
Mouthpiece is going this way. Dubois is going this way, and the referee's saying, "What do you want from me?"
But this idea, Paulie, like, we didn't see a flaw in that fight. He made adjustments. I saw the same thing you did after round number one. Usyk just went, I can adjust. And he did like a champ, but got the knockout. No flaws in this performance, or very few.
Yeah, and this was a fight where, people were questioning and wondering. Obviously Usyk was the favorite, but going in, the odds on the experts and the fans, it was sort of broken up in different directions. Even I wasn't sure because although I believe Usyk is the fighter of the generation in this weight class, he's at an age where, overnight you sort of show up and you don't have it anymore. Ali randomly lost to Leon Spinks around this age and whatnot, So you could get where all of a sudden, it's not there on the night. So, and you had
and heavyweights takes 1 second. One split second, you're off.
Yeah, exactly. And you also had a very motivated Dubois to add to that second, who's a very powerful puncher and has sort of this bully mentality when he gets you in an uncomfortable position. But, Usyk, flawless performance technically, stepping out to that weak side consistently, mixing up the jabs, making things uncomfortable for Dubois rhythm-wise.
He seemed more aggressive, right? Normally, I think with some of the bigger guys, he sliced the weak side, sliced that weak side. This was different.
I think with Dubois, the psychology is kind of out of the bag in that you got to kind of bully the bully, and Dubois came out trying to bully him a little bit, so he started touching him and hitting him, and he started taking it to him because you start backing him up, you start putting him in a situation where he starts to doubt himself, and Dubois doesn't really come back from that very often. As a matter of fact,
he doesn't bend, he breaks.
In the fight, I thought he's a little bit awkward, Dubois. I don't know, but
he's one of those awkward strong guys. Yeah, he's just like super strong, awkward as hell.
He goes down and he takes the full count, and then he just gets up at 10 and walks across the ring right in front of Usyk, who's celebrating middle of the ring, like with his hands up in the air. Just casually walks right by Usyk's celebration as if he didn't just get counted out to 10.
Foreman Ali. Remember, he walks right to his corner.
Yeah, but I was like, dude, you could have got up. You waited to 10, and then
he was a beaten man.
You waited to 10, and then not only you get up, you don't even have the presence of mind to realize like I'm walking right into the picture where he's celebrating.
But Paulie, he was a beaten man before the first knockdown. You saw his spirit leave his body. Not as if he's dying. I mean, his fighting spirit just completely leave his body. Yeah. And we've seen that before. It happened the last time. And a lot of people were asking me during fight week. They're like, "Hey, man, Dubois looks really good. What do you think?" I'm like, it doesn't matter. The psychology of that man. Usyk is already his daddy, and he showed that again. He's already made him quit.
Yeah.
He's going to do it
It's
again.
very hard to overcome Usyk mentally. You know, physically, I think there will come a time if he keeps at this.
I don't think anyone overcomes it mentally.
No. He's got a different mental state.
broke-
Again,
he broke
that's
Joshua,
why
too.
that's why those Soviets, because ultimately he's born into the Soviet Union. That mentality it makes him difficult to beat. Yes, they're
He
technically
also might
sound,
be a
but
little
they're
bit
also-
crazy.
Well, you gotta be a
you look
little
at
bit
his
crazy to
eyes.
be a fighter,
you look at
you know?
those. He's got those
Yeah.
eyes. They're so intense.
Yeah.
He looks a little crazy.
and he stands
Crazy
for
like a
something.
fox.
You know, he's got that whole Ukrainian thing
Yeah.
going, and the Ukraine is going through a tough time. He's very religious, so he really believes in himself.
Don't come at me in the
that way.
comments. I'm not serious. I was joking. His
yeah.
eyes look crazy.
But
These people, I
you
can't
know,
think of joke.
yeah, no, you get they get a little in their feelings sometimes. But no, I mean it's I think he's really it's hard to pick a flaw with Usyk. You know, it's very difficult to pick a flaw, and I think when you compare him in the all-time greats, I don't think you take the 38-year-old Usyk. You take the composite Usyk altogether, and you say, the greatness he had at cruiserweight, the greatness he's had at heavyweight, and you can see the difficulty of
And the
beating
Olympics.
this
Let's
guy.
not forget the
Olympics
Right.
as
The
well.
amateur pedigree.
This guy beat basically everybody. The only guy he can get to fight is Wilder. And honestly, in the Olympics, he would have fought Wilder had Clemente Russo not beaten both of them in 2008. Clemente Russo beat Wilder in the quarters. Oh no, he beat Usyk in the quarterfinals in the weight, and then he beat Wilder in the next fight in the semis before losing in the finals. So had Usyk beaten Clemente Russo in 2008, he would have fought Wilder in the semis. So they would have fought in the amateurs. Instead, Usyk beat Clemente Russo in the finals of the 2012 games when he won his gold medal. So Russo ends up with 2 silver medals, mind you. Poor guy. But I don't think this guy's had a really tough fight, despite everybody, on paper looking like they're going to be a threat at the other times, since probably Maris Bradis. Honestly, right? Maybe the Maris
I thought Fury gave him some trouble in the first fight. I thought he had to come back from some adversity.
And the second Joshua fight was hard.
Yeah,
Second
no.
Joshua fight was
I'm not saying. I'm not saying
He had to dig deep in the second Joshua
I'm not saying
fight,
he
he had to
dominated any of these guys. Because at heavyweight, he's been tested, of course, but
Chisora gave him hell.
Yeah, for 3 rounds. But what I'm saying is, you're watching the whole composite fight. Like I said, Tyson Fury, the second half of the fight, he fell apart for him. You know what I mean? Joshua, the fourth quarter of the fight, it fell apart for him in the rematch. With Bradis, I felt like the whole time, like you're kind of nip and tuck there with Maris Bradis. That's the only time where
Bradis is like that with everybody, though.
Where for 12 rounds,
Bradis is a problem.
Where for 12 rounds, you're like, woof, this is a rough fight.
Bradis did that to Opatai as well in both fights. Broke his jaw in the first fight, and the second fight was
that was
really
an older
close.
Bradis, mind you.
Right,
you know?
right. Bradis is that guy.
Before we discuss his all-time legacy, which we will get to in just a second, we all have strong opinions about that one. What's next? Is there anybody? He has literally lapped the division, gentlemen. He's beaten everybody twice. Wilder? I mean, does anybody think that?
No.
He's the only heavyweight name.
The tougher fights at this point are like
Take it.
Capiel or something like the next.
The young
You're
guys,
talking about next generation, which again could beat him at a certain point because you're all getting older, and if you hang around too long, you could have that night where you're somebody overcomes you.
Father Time's undefeated.
I'm just saying. I think it's to the point
Well,
where...
actually, he already took on the young guy. Dubois is one of the young guys. Dubois was 27.
and
he's still young, and he beat him twice.
And I think that you're at the point here where I'm noticing that no matter what Usyk does, that's it. His level of greatness is going to be topped out right here by the critics. They're never going to let him go higher than that, no matter what he does. You could bring King Kong into reality, and he could beat King Kong, and they'll no, doesn't matter. This guy's still better than him. So
Listen, I'll take that bet if you want to go against Usyk. I'll take.
No, of course. But what I'm saying is, even if he did that, he's topped out already as far as in people's eyes and critics' eyes. There's the nostalgia feeling in fans and historians is so strong that you're never going to let this guy have the I'm the greatest of all time, which I think it's at least a conversation.
But also, champ,
I'm not saying it's definitive or not, because you'll never have that answer. It's 2 different eras. It's some great fighters in different generations, and it's a great conversation to have. But it gets emotional. People get mad. People get angry at you. There's really a lot of positives about the old eras and a lot of positives about this era, and there's comparisons that are sometimes you can say this is stronger, sometimes you can say that's stronger, and you really don't have a right or wrong answer. But I think he's earned the right to at least be in that conversation for life.
And that's one of the reasons why I think, what other fights are there? As you said, I agree with you. I think he is topped out in terms of where his greatness could be because he doesn't have a dance partner anymore. He's beaten everybody. And he's having a bit of the Roy Jones effect where you fight really good fighters and you beat them all the time. It makes it be like, those guys aren't that good. No, they are. Tyson Fury is one of the greatest heavyweights in the modern era, for sure.
For sure.
And Usyk has 2 wins over him. So now people are pushing Tyson Fury to the side, being like,
Yeah.
he's not that great. He lost to Usyk twice. But Tyson Fury's a problem.
I mean, I'm gonna maybe give you the answers that people don't want to hear, and I'm not gonna say it outright, but there's a reason why people don't want to give Fury and Usyk their credit.
I mean,
let's be
Fury is a nightmare for absolutely everyone who's ever fought in the heavyweight division. I don't care who you say. I mean, he's a giant. He's athletic. His conditioning is crazy. And then Usyk beats him twice.
Athletic for that size, is crazy.
But also athletic and gas tank. You would never think a guy with that big would have a good gas tank, and he does. He finished the first fight with Usyk very strong after getting dropped, which is really hard for a big guy. So or getting rocked. Excuse me. But yeah, no, I think you're right about Usyk in terms of his greatness. And listen, all of you, and I'm not talking about fans, I'm talking about you boxing pundits. I said this guy was all-time last fight, and people were coming at me like, oh, he's not all-time, no way. All right, how about now? Is he all-time yet?
Also, you have to start.
I'm not saying all-time greatest, but we're in a discussion.
You have to start also considering people's amateur careers too, because some of the ex-Soviets have longer amateur careers, and then people say, oh, how can you be this great with only 20 pro fights or something like that? You can be when you dominate the amateurs. It's people in the know who know and understand boxing know how difficult it is to dominate the amateurs. Sometimes, a lot of times, the amateurs is more difficult to dominate than the pros because you're consistently in tough fights. There are no gimme fights in the amateurs. It's all tournaments, and at a certain level, you're constantly in tough fights, constantly. So it's I think the consideration for dominance in the amateurs has to also start to be considered more. Just because people don't follow it, just because you're ignorant, doesn't mean like it shouldn't count. You know what I mean? Like for the people that know, the amateurs, to dominate the amateurs is a very, very difficult thing to do. And some of these Soviets that are, I call them Soviets, even though Soviet Union.
Right.
I'm sure people
the former Soviet republics.
Yeah. Yes. Some of these guys stay in the amateurs longer and dominate that, and then come to the pros, skip the prospect phase, jump right into contender status, and dominate that. So just because they're skipping the prospect phase and going right to contender status and dominating doesn't mean that you counted against them. That's also an ignorant thing, because they didn't take the 10, 15 freebies. They just went right to contenders and started beating them. So I don't understand how you take credit away instead of giving credit for doing that. It's very difficult for a guy to turn pro and just go right to contenders and beat them. So, again, there's a lot of ignorance in terms of judging this, and that's why it goes that way. But either way, it's not an easy conversation to have. I think it can be a fun conversation, but people get emotional about it.
They certainly do. All right, let's do this in kind of a logical way to me, the way I see it. The only things that hold him back, look, the all-time conversation is he was a comparatively small heavyweight. A lot of people say, well, Lennox. Now, is it a positive or a negative? Because we were just talking about, by the way, off camera, we talk about this stuff. We're talking about Lennox Lewis, a giant heavyweight with incredible power. The idea that Usyk did what he did, Chris, with less than what a lot of the all-time great guys had. He's not a big heavyweight. Does that count for him or against him? Because sometimes it takes away a little bit of his flash, meaning he wasn't destroying guys. He wasn't knocking guys' heads off. He wasn't doing the flash that Ali did in his prime. Didn't do a lot of those things. Does that take away from him or does it help him? They didn't have all the physical tools of a lot of guys.
Well, you got to compare. You talk about Ali. They're the same size.
Yep.
So they're 6'3", 223 pounds. Like literally to the T.
Almost exact.
I think they have the same birthday too, oddly enough, whatever. But
isn't that crazy?
There's all these crazy
and
comparisons.
Jake Paul. Randomly.
So you've got this comparison. You're talking about the size, smaller, heavy. But listen, Evander Holyfield was the guy that we were talking about, a couple fights ago. Like, hell, Evander Holyfield, undisputed cruiserweight, becomes heavyweight champion of the world. Yeah. Smaller guy.
3 times.
Isn't that incredible? Usyk's better because not only is he fighting these massive heavyweights now, these super heavy, he's knocking them out. Lennox was. Evander wasn't knocking these guys out. He didn't knock out Lennox Lewis. He didn't. Those fights with Lennox Lewis, he was pretty much dominated. But Usyk is finding a way, but also knocking these guys out.
I think it's again a difficult comparison, but he's worthy of the conversation. I will say that Ali and Holyfield were in 15-round eras. Holyfield's cruiserweight run was in the 15-round era. Then
I think a 15-round era would actually help Usyk.
I think it would too.
He'd be even more dominant.
Yeah, I think it would too. But of course, it's hard to judge it because he doesn't have the 15-round era. Granted,
but who the hell's going to dance with him for 15?
Yeah, of course. No, I get it, but what I'm saying is, that's there. Like I said, there's pros and cons to the comparison. So, the Ali era and the Holyfield era, you say, okay, you had 15-rounders. You had you had a deeper talent pool.
Two deep eras,
per se. Because I'm going to counter that as well. Per se, you had a deeper talent pool, and I agree you had a deep talent pool because
you did.
Because you also don't have Western athletes going into so many other sports, especially the advent of MMA. It took a lot of potential boxers and took them to a different sport. So the talent pool starts to diminish a little bit because the guys who are going into combat, the athletes who are going into combat, are now going into a different combat sport with the advent of MMA.
Boxing made you more money than the NFL back then.
Yes, but this also, there's a counterpoint to that. This also leads you to, at the same time, the Soviet Union also falls while it's the advent of MMA. So the Soviet Union falls at the advent of MMA. Suddenly these guys can turn pro, but the first generation and a half are not turning pro right away. I remember there were guys like Gaiderbekov, who beat Golovkin in the gold medal match in 2004, never turned pro. There was Oleg Saitov, who was a welterweight gold medalist 2 times from Russia, never turned pro. So the beginning generations of the former Soviet states continued that culture. Some of them, they didn't turn pro, or some of them were turning pro late, like Lomachenko, even like Usyk after a couple of Olympics. You didn't have a lot of Vladimir Klitschko's who did one Olympic and turn pro. That was the beginning. So
Zhirov, people remember him.
Zhirov too, exactly. So while you had a deep talent pool in the 80s and 70s, it must be said, and a lot of athletes were going to boxing as opposed to football, or there was no MMA. Now in the 90s and 2000s, you have maybe some of these athletes going to other sports, and also they're going to MMA. But you have the entrance of the Eastern Europeans. You have the entrance of the former Soviet states. And here's where you get lucky. At least MMA's taken some of them. Because if MMA wasn't taking some of those guys, they would dominate the whole sport. Okay, then you'd be talking about different level of talent pool, because at least MMA started also pulling some of the Eastern Europeans away from boxing as well. So you have something to say.
And then it would be the end of boxing.
Yeah.
Because they're completely unmarketable.
Yeah.
They're actually hurting MMA.
Yeah.
They're just super unmarketable. They go out there.
Good.
They live in the gym. They come out of their.
They don't speak English. They don't bother to learn English.
They kick the shit out of your favorite fighter, and then they go back to the gym.
Yeah.
So it would be the end of the sport because there's no marketability.
And there's one other thing. Bigger heavyweights now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super
so
heavyweights.
Usyk
Super
looks
athletes.
small, while in Ali's era he would have been normal.
He would have been big.
And also, one more thing, guys. The lefty heavyweight champion wasn't a thing until the 90s.
Yeah.
Michael Moore.
You're also not dealing with lefties in the heavyweight division like you are now. Now you're dealing with lefties in the heavyweight division. And that's also its own jigsaw puzzle.
Only boxers are going to understand that, because being lefty is literally having a leg up. Being a southpaw is such an advantage in the amateurs and the pros. Dealing with southpaws is very, very difficult.
So you can tell me all you want about the depth of the old eras and all this other stuff. If there was that much depth, where the hell are my lefties? Where's my lefties?
A lot of them converted. They were told, like, hey.
Tyson.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
Tyson.
I know, at least some of them converted. They were like, hey.
Okay. But still, it created a different puzzle even then. So you have some things going for the old era and some things going for the new era. The old era, you have 15 rounders. You had more top athletes entering boxing as opposed to other sports. The new era, you have bigger heavyweights. You have the Soviet era that didn't exist back then. And you have lefties. So, again, you can go back and forth. And that's why there's not really a winner in the conversation. You can go both ways.
No, this is a thought experiment.
But some people get emotional, but that's why it's difficult to make.
It depends what you're talking about, right? If you're talking about accolades, what you've been accomplished, there's no question that Oleksandr Usyk is in the top. You're talking about the top guys, of course.
But Ali as well. Think about it. Ali won a gold medal.
for sure.
When I say the top, I'm thinking Ali. In terms of what you've done, in terms of being the Olympic amateur pedigree, the unifying the cruiserweight division and literally taking heads of champions as you did it, and then going into the heavyweight division and dominating the way you have. Of course, though, and that kind of conversation, you got Ali in there, you got Lennox Lewis in there, you got Oleksandr Usyk. I'm going in chronological order. Now, that's the argument there. The argument there is like, you're nitpicking, whatever. If you're talking about who kicks whose ass, because that's what when I do pound for pound, who kicks whose ass when they fight? That's where the discussion really gets fun, and that's where the theoretical.
But it also gets emotional, right?
Of course, but that's what happens in barbershops. That's why people get punched and shot in barbershops.
but I'll tell you what, you're making me think something too. Lennox's run similar, although he's much bigger, so he didn't go to the cruiserweight division. He also fought in 2 Olympics, the first of which he didn't win.
Right.
And he didn't medal. In 84, he didn't medal. I think he lost in the quarters as well.
Yes.
Which is where Usyk lost in 2008 in the quarters, and then returns and wins a gold
I actually
medal.
watched that fight the other day.
So of course the 84 Olympics, right?
Exactly.
So similar run for Lennox as well, because then he goes on and winds up. He gets a little bit stagnated because everybody was into the Tyson mystique and the Tyson era. But then once he gets going, Lennox becomes the dominant heavyweight of his era, and by and large is one of the top 1, 2, or 3 heavyweights ever, right? So I think Usyk's run sort of mimics that, only he's a little smaller, so he was able to pick up a cruiserweight championship and then move up. While Lennox was so big, he was never able to.
And one thing, I'm a huge Lennox fan.
Me too.
He underperformed against names he thought he could be. The guys who beat him, Hasim Rahman, where did that guy come from? He tended to kind of overlook Oliver McCall. He tended to overlook certain guys.
Ray Mercer randomly gave him a tough fight.
But it busted him in 2 fights.
But I gotta say,
he did tend to do that.
God forbid you made the mistake of beating Lennox.
Oh, God, he went back and hurt you.
God forbid.
Then you're becoming a meme. You're becoming a meme.
Yeah, God
you beat
forbid,
Lennox, you're becoming a meme.
That's the thing. That's why when you can make the comparisons, you take the best Ali, the best Usyk. You gotta take the best Lennox as well. That motivated, pissed off Lennox was a beast
best
as
Lennox
well.
may actually not be beatable, honestly. Being as big as he is, and athletic as smart as he was, and you could take him in the 15-round era. I think he would have been a great 15-round fight. To tell you the truth. Also, so I'm gonna put a little argument for the amateur pedigree of both. Lennox being what Lennox is, because he's the bigger guy, the 3 rounds is not good for him. And because I watched the fight with
Terrell Biggs?
With Biggs. And Biggs, actually, if you really watch Biggs in the 84 Olympics, God, he was good.
He's a good amateur.
Oh,
well, Biggs
God.
also drugs messed him up too. He's a very good athlete.
He fought like Ali. It was really
Think about it. The era that's dominant is when people try to fight. Like during the Mayweather era, you saw a lot of guys trying to copy Mayweather.
Yeah, not a good style.
The 84 is post Ali era, Leonard. You know,
Sugar
people
Ray.
trying to fight that.
A lot
way,
of Leonard stylistically, guys.
Yeah.
But I watched that fight last week actually. Tyrell Biggs beating Lennox Lewis, and I was
Mind
like,
you, Lennox beat him in the pros then, right?
right. No, so this is exactly to my point. Now you're going ahead of me like we always did with each other. But Tyrell Biggs goes out there. He boxes like Ali. Looks phenomenal. Definitely beats Lennox. Beat him in the amateur. But it's a 3-round fight. They fight in the pros. He gets iced, which happened a lot of those guys like Mike Tyson, Henry Tillman. Henry Tillman beat him on the way to the Olympics when they fought in the pros.
Crushed him.
He got crushed in 1 round. Henry Tillman beat for the gold medal. He beat the Canadian. I can't remember his name right now. They fought in the pros. Tillman lost. So like the style for the amateurs is very different than the pros, and I think it
Quicker
helps.
too.
Quicker
pace.
So if you look at the style of both Lennox Lewis versus Oleksandr Usyk, you're like, oh yeah, so he still has a lot of amateur style to him. He starts up quick. He's got that speedy slide, boom, 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 pops those hands, lets those hands go. He builds, gets his knockouts later. Lennox, much more of a slower pace, sets the table. Wait for the right hand. Here it comes. Boom. So very, very different style. So in terms of their body types and sizes, it's hard to compare them. But we're talking about the pros, guys. What happens when they fight each other in the pros?
And the thing is, again, the lefty question. Lennox, we don't see him against lefties, right?
Not very often.
We don't see him against. No, I mean the heavyweight era of Lennox with the lefties was only basically Michael Moore. Shagayev, who came around later, was a lefty. I think he was a heavyweight, won a heavyweight title as a lefty. That's it. You've only had.
David Tua was a converted lefty.
Was he?
Converted.
Left hook.
Converted.
Yeah, no right
Like
hand.
a Tyson.
Hell of a left hook. Yeah, when a guy's got a left hook, a lot of times it's because they're left-handed. But it's always fun to have the argument. One thing you can't say is that Usyk isn't number 1 of this era, number 1 with the bullet, officially lapping the division. What's next for him? We don't know, but as it makes news, you'll see it right here on Boxing Scene Today. Tune in, find out why millions are watching.